Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Conservation Commission meeting of July 9th. Heather Charles Liss, I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Town of Braintree's temporary emergency policy for remote participation under the open meeting law pursuant to Massachusetts Executive Order of March 12th, 2020. The town's using Zoom software for the meeting, and the information for joining the meeting by audio or video was posted with the agenda on the town's website, along with the web link for accessing plans and other materials relevant to the items on the agenda. These materials will continue to be available throughout the meeting for participants to view, or staff or consultants may share their screens showing the materials during the meeting. In accordance with open meeting law and the town's policy, this meeting is being recorded by the town. If any participant wishes to record the meeting, please notify me now so that I may inform all other participants. Okay, the record can show that no participants expressed a wish to record the meeting. For commissioners, in accordance with the town's guidance for remote meetings, roll call votes must be taken on all matters requiring a vote. For clarity, I'll continue to make the motions where I normally offer up a motion. It seemed to also be helpful to designate a second in the past. So Chris, as our chair, would you mind seconding this evening?
Not a problem.
All right, thank you very much. Assuming that is that you want to second, you're not required
Sure.
to. Should you disagree, of course. Okay, we'll now begin our agenda with public hearings. These are all this evening being heard under the State Wetlands Protection Act and the local Braintree Wetlands Bylaw. Please be advised that under Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, the statutory timelines for the permitting process have been suspended or tolled and are now extended 45 days after the COVID-19 state of emergency. So while we're permitted under this order to suspend our business until the order is lifted, the Conservation Commission, in consultation with conservation staff, has decided to continue processing applications and holding public hearings remotely. And we're attempting to follow the normal statutory and regulatory deadlines to the extent possible under the current conditions. Okay, so one final note is that for any permits that are voted on, the original decisions will be issued and mailed to the applicants, but there will be a time lag as the commission members will need time to sign the decisions. Finally, anyone speaking, please state your full name and affiliation for the record, and commissioners, try to restate your name later on as you comment, just so people can keep track of who's speaking. Okay, first we have a first we have a request for determination of applicability for 60 Albee Drive. We have gotten a request from the applicant to continue that until our next meeting on October 1st. We don't need a vote on that since the request came in advance of the meeting. Next, we have a notice of intent, continued public hearing for DEP file number 8-681. Location is Gordon Road, Watson Park, and the applicant is the town of Braintree. And this is for Bank and Saltmarsh. We also have a second notice of intent, and I would suggest that as at the last meeting, we hear these two concurrently, unless anyone objects. Okay, hearing no objections. I'll open that hearing as well for DEP file number 8-682, Gordon Road, Watson Park, same location and same applicant, town of Braintree, but the scope of work this time is for the berm. So I will turn it over to the consultant for some updates.
Very much. For the record, my name is Elise Leduc. I'm a coastal scientist with the Woods Hole Group, and I'll be representing the town for these two applications. I guess before I keep talking to myself, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So following the meeting that we had at the beginning of August, there were a number of comments, requests, questions from the commission that we did go back and make quite a few changes, many of them minor, but I think they add up to a pretty substantial overall improvement to the project. I'm going to try to go through them as quickly as I can, just to let you know the changes that were made. I'll start with the Saltmarsh Coastal Bank application. The first was a request that a storm emergency plan be provided. A note number 13 was added to the first page of the plan set that basically says the contractor will provide that prior to the start of work. The second comment was that a detail for the rock sill should indicate that the face of the sill will have an irregular surface rather than a smooth surface. And the detail on page 2 of the plan set now has a note on it that indicates that that face of the sill will be a roughened, not smooth surface. So it'll be more of a natural, almost like a rocky intertidal habitat in and of itself. The third comment from the commission was that a detail of the wildlife exclusion fencing should be provided. We don't have that on the plans itself. I added example photos to the restoration and revegetation protocol. Kelly may comment on this. She may ask that more details be included prior to the start of construction, but we didn't have those on the plans at this time, but there are example photographs if you did want to see the type of fencing that we were talking about. It's really more of a series of strings and poles than hard structures. There was also a comment that the meadow mix that is used should be specified and salt tolerant. The specific seed mix to be used is specified in the restoration and revegetation protocol. The Appendix E to that restoration and revegetation protocol document does have the specs for that seed mix, listing out each of the plants, the plant species that are within it. They are salt tolerant grasses, and this seed mix, there was sort of a mixing of language on the plan. There's a detail of the head wall, and there's a little bit of fill that's going to be put behind the head wall to even out the coastal bank behind there. It's labeled as being planted with meadow mix, but that is the same coastal salt tolerant seed mix that is specified in the restoration and revegetation protocol. I would say if at any point someone has a question or a comment on something I'm saying, please stop me. There are a few more for this particular plan. There was a discussion about whether additional salt marsh plugs and plantings could be added to the existing salt marsh areas that are sort of deteriorating and really sparsely vegetated at this time. We added a sentence to the revegetation protocol that basically says additional salt marsh plantings may be added to the existing fringing marsh areas outside of the restoration footprint to enhance the vegetation density in these areas. This was not added to the plans. It'll have to be more of a at the time judgment call where the plants need to go. But additional plantings and plugs will be included in the construction specifications, which will be a next phase of the development of this project. There was a comment from one of the commissioners last time that the corner of one of the salt marsh restoration areas be rounded. The western corner had been quite pointy. We did redesign that portion to be more rounded. That did change a number of the areas and volumes. And in the end, it really minor changes, but it was all a reduction in footprint and a reduction in area. So the sill area, the actual rock sill footprint on the western side was reduced by 93 square feet. It did have a small reduction in the salt marsh restoration area, but only by 50 square feet as we kind of chopped off that little corner. The volume of fill changed by 2 cubic yards, fewer than we had originally planned. So everything's a little bit less than it was before because we basically cut off a piece of what we had been proposing. An additional comment from the commission was that a note should be added to the plan requiring that mats should be used if the vehicle needs to access the salt marsh. And this was added to note number 2 on this first sheet of the plans. The sentence now reads, construction mats will be utilized if traversing the existing salt marsh area is required to install the eastern salt marsh restoration area. And then finally, for this application, the last comment was that staging and stockpiling area should be shown on the plan, and you can actually see that it's a quite large area. It's the big dashed square in the upper middle of the plan. In consultation with the DPW and the Recreation Department, it was determined that those 2 baseball fields that it would encompass are not used really at all, and so using that area for construction access and staging wouldn't affect the use of the fields and wouldn't require any kind of significant time restriction to allow us to get in there. And there is a detail in the very upper left of the plan that adds the track pads to coming in and out of the roadway. It just, the way the plans were situated, the road gets kind of cut off at the upper part of that image. I believe all of the other comments were related to the other applications, so perhaps before I move on to that, I can ask if anyone had any further clarifying questions or comments on any of the changes I just described.
Great, thank you very much, Elise. I I guess we'll start with Kelly. Are you satisfied with the changes? Is there anything remaining that you have concerns or questions about?
No, I'm good.
Okay, commissioners?
I have no additional comments.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
They addressed
I
concerns.
I also don't have any additional comments. Thank you very much for all the changes. I have a couple comments about conditions, but I'll save those until we're at that part of the discussion. As we did the last time, I'm just going to go ahead and ask if any members of the public have any questions or comments on this project, specifically the salt marsh and bank restoration work.
Please raise your hand if you do.
Okay, and I'm not seeing any hands raised. So we do have a draft decision in front of us for this project. I think perhaps we could either go ahead and talk about the decision now, or we could just move forward with the other project. I'm leaning towards continuing with the other project in case anything that comes up during that discussion relates to this earlier project. As the last time, I think there were a couple of comments that sort of overlapped or that triggered our memories to think of something else. So would everyone be okay with moving on to the next discussion? Then we'll come back to a potential decision.
Sure.
Okay, great. So Elise, if you want to go ahead and go through the changes for the berm project, that would be great.
Great. So there were a few more comments from the commission on this one, so this will take me just a moment longer to go through than it did for the marsh plans. The first comment was that given the potential, the hope to remove this berm down the line to allow for sea level rise and salt marsh mitigation due to climate change to migrate into the park space, that a public education plan should be developed, including markers and signage. Developing that whole plan is outside of our particular scope right now, but we did add a sentence to the narrative saying that the town is planning to install educational signage to inform park visitors about flood risks, sea level rise, and the long-term plan for the berm removal to encourage salt marsh migration. That was added to the proposed work section of the narrative, so that's page B4. And then note number 8 was added to the page 1 of the plans, which states the town will develop signage to inform visitors about flood risk, sea level rise, and long-term plan for berm removal to encourage salt marsh mitigation. So that was added to both the narrative and the plan. We had discussed the ability of the park to drain in the event that flooding does overtop the berm during a larger storm. At the August 6th hearing, I mentioned that 1 foot of water covering the entire 18-acre park would take 2 to 2.5 days to drain if the collector pipe was increased from 6 inches as we originally had it designed to 10 inches. After further discussion with the town staff, we actually altered the proposed collector pipe so that rather than feeding into a single one of the existing storm drain pipes from either end of the rain gardens, they actually feed into both of the storm drains, which will make that drainage just a little bit faster again. So those changes, the drop inlets are now indicated on the plan, and the detail was revised to indicate a 10-inch collector pipe. So those changes were made. There was also a comment that the berm should be redesigned or resited to avoid the impacts to the existing rain gardens near the splash pad. We talked about a couple different options at that hearing, and what we came up with is what you can see in the plan in front of you, is that the main part of the berm would stay to the left of the splash pad, and then we would add a small, this is going to be a very small, like a foot a foot of fill on the other side, just to close off that additional flood pathway, basically avoiding the entire rain garden footprint in front of the splash pad. And again, as with the changes of the salt marsh, altering the footprint of the berm altered our areas of impact. So the change was actually almost 2,000 square feet less than we had before. So we're having less impact than our original design. There was a comment that the contour lines were not labeled on the original plan. They are now labeled. A comment about the loss of trees. We did look at changing the way the rain gardens are situated. Rather than one large continuous surface rain garden, we've basically broken it into different segments to retain as many of the large standing trees as we can. There are a few trees just about see them depending on the size of your screen. There are 3 X's in the middle of the path near to the large yellow area that is now riverward of the path. Those 3 X's indicate trees that would still need to be removed because they are in the footprint of where the path itself is going to be. Because there's limited space really to replace the 3 trees that we would need to lose, and the overall project is resulting in a significant amount of native plantings. And in fact, we've added that yellow area as an additional mitigation planting area. So what's currently in that yellow area is existing path and lawn. We would replace with a native meadow, native upland grasses mix. And we are requesting a waiver from the tree protection regulations in order to allow this project to move forward. There was a discrepancy between the revegetation protocol and the rain garden planting detail that we talked about at the August 6th hearing. One had mentioned shrubs to use in the rain garden, one had mentioned wildflowers. During the August 6th hearing, what I heard from the commission members was that shrubs sounded easier to maintain for someone who didn't know the difference between weeds and wildflowers. They could just leave the shrubs. But after having additional discussions with DPW and the stormwater manager, DPW is the one who's really going to be maintaining this area. They decided that they mentioned that they wouldn't be able to maintain it unless they were able to mow the whole thing, and the woody shrubs don't allow for that. And so we've relisted the plants that would be used as the black-eyed Susan and the purple coneflower rather than the woody shrubs that we originally had, because once a year you can basically mow the whole area back in the fall, and it'll all come back just fine in the spring. So it will still allow for sort of a native mix. The flowers will make for a bit of a colorful, more aesthetic patch, and it'll be easier for the DPW to manage. There was also a question of what types of grasses should be planted on which areas of the berm. We kind of went back and forth whether the whole berm on the field side should be turf grass, if the whole berm should be native grass mix. And after, again, talking with the DPW on what's really feasible and logical for them to be maintaining, we did end up going with half and half on the field side. Basically, anywhere there's a rain garden, from the rain garden to the path itself moving up the berm would be a continuation of a native grass mix. And anywhere where the bottom of the berm starts at a grassy field and comes up to the pathway, that would be planted with a similar turf lawn grass. And I think that maybe that makes not only the maintenance a little simpler for the DPW, but it also allows folks more than 2 access points to this section of pathway. They can basically walk up very easily wherever there are these little chunks of turf grass. Again, a little bit of a confusion. Some of the documentation specifies a native upland seed mix and some of it specifies a warm season grass mix. These are the same things. It was an oversight on my part. This really should all refer to a warm season grass mix that is listed in the Appendix A of the revegetation protocol. This is a mix that includes big blue stem, little blue stem, rye, switchgrass, red fescue, and Indian grass. A few other comments from the commission was that straw wattle or compost filter tube should be shown on the plans for erosion control rather than the silt fence. We have switched that out. Again, the staging area, we did show the same staging area for this project as that dashed black square for those 2 baseball field areas after consultation with the DPW. There was that comment from CZM about the potential for the stormwater collected in the rain garden to impact the integrity of the berm should lots of flooding occur and pooling water hold there for a while. After talking to our engineers, they didn't think it was a problem. We didn't think, my understanding from the August 6th hearing was that the commissioners didn't really feel it was a problem either, but as a precaution, we did carry forward the Filtrex compost blanket halfway up the landward side of the berm, which gives a little bit added stability to that side of the feature. And then finally, there was a request to provide an operation and maintenance plan for the rain gardens. This was already included for the most part in the monitoring and maintenance plan for the earthen berm and rain gardens, but we did add a significant amount of detail to that to now include details on mowing, maintenance of the pipes, repair of the drain pipes if necessary, etc. So that is part of that monitoring and maintenance plan within the application. The one thing I don't have a great answer for you on is the possibility of relocating Patrick Flynn's memorial bench. It's certainly something that I think makes sense, and I think Kelly thinks makes sense, but it's not, I think, up to either of us to decide if that's okay. So I'd love to hear what the possibilities for that are, and where we think that could fit into this overall picture. Heather, I think you're on mute.
Thanks, I was. Thank you, Elisa.
Oh, you're welcome. I saw your mouth moving, but nothing was coming out.
Amazingly, that's the first time I've done that, I think, on one of these meetings. I hope it's the last, but it probably won't be.
No, it happens to all of us.
Kelly, do you have anything to add at this time?
No, I think we need to talk to the family, which we weren't able to do prior to the meeting.
Okay. I would agree with that. Do commissioners, any questions or comments about any aspect of this project?
My only comment would be that they've done a thorough job. I appreciate all the work that you put into this. You know, when you think about it, it's a berm, right? But there's so much more to it. And I think it's fantastic. Spent a lot of time at that park over the last few years, and this is going to be awesome.
Well, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Anyone else?
It looks good.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. I had one comment beyond the dedication bench, which I think there was more of a bench. I do think we really need that input. I think that's important. But the other comment I had is about the trees. I really appreciate that there's been an effort to actually shift things around a little bit to avoid mature trees. As I was looking at the plans and the aerial, I apologize I did not have a chance to get down to the site, but it seemed to me that there may be opportunity for some tree plantings to the west, sort of it's more southwest of the berm, where the berm will be. There's an area on the park side of the path where there's a lot of trees, but then there's sort of a gap in those trees, and it's not within the playing field, it's behind a player's dugout. And I thought there might be opportunity to site, you know, a few trees in that location. So perhaps that could be added if feasible. It could be like an if feasible kind of a condition was my thought. So let me go to any members of the public who would like to ask a question or comment on the berm component of this work.
Yeah, hands. Let me unmute. Yep, Robert.
Hello.
Okay, thank you. Then why don't we?
It looks like there's one hand raised.
Oh, I just saw that. Yep, there's actually two hands raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you state your name for the record, and then you can go ahead and comment.
Hi, Robert Kearns, Braintree Pilgrim Road. I think the plan looks pretty good. For education, one idea I had was, I've seen it in other places, they have the sea level rise poles where you can kind of see where the sea level will rise, like height-wise. So that's one comment. Other comment was, I think it would be a good idea to add a condition to remove the berm or figure out where you would remove it by the time that the sea level rise is high enough so that the salt marsh can migrate. Because I think it'll be hard in the future to try to advocate for that without some full vision. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments. I agree with both. And there's another hand raised. Suzanne, would you like to comment?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, just state your full name for the record and then you can comment.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Brothers. I live on 84 Arthur Street in the Watson Park neighborhood. Also help to run the community garden and I'm a member of Sustainable Braintree. But I'm commenting tonight as a resident. and this is new to me, so I'm just looking at this for the first time over the past few days. And one thing that I noticed when you were talking about the plantings that were going in there with the wildflowers, I think you mentioned Echinacea and Rudbeckia, and the maintenance the DPW would be required to do. I noticed, especially this summer and also last summer, they're using a broad spectrum herbicide all along the wall there. So I don't know how that fits in with the maintenance plan as we move forward. That's definitely something to consider.
Hey, you cut out at the very end there. I don't know if you had, I'm not sure if you were done or if we missed the end of what you said. If you want to try to finish your thought.
How
please
much
feel
did
free.
you hear? Where did I cut out?
I heard you saying that you've observed the DPW using an herbicide along the edge there, and then I didn't hear anything right after that.
Right. So I I don't think that would fit well in with the plans for the Rudbeckia and Echinacea. So that would have to be part of the plans as you move forward to in terms of maintenance and keeping that up.
Okay, thank you very much for the comment.
And then also, could I also add, I
Sure.
also would like to support what Robert said about future planning with what we'll do with that piece of the berm when sea level rises, and we need to restore more of the salt marsh.
Okay, thank you very much. Elise or Kelly, can you comment on whether herbicide use is discussed in the O&M plan?
It is not right now.
Okay.
But I think that if you could condition that, although I think we would want to have a discussion with DPW to make sure they understand it appropriately.
Yeah,
hoping
Kelly,
that
do you
that
have
would
any input on this? Because I would be very much in favor of prohibiting all chemical use, in this area. But I also don't want to just put that condition in without, and surprise them without
Right. Yeah, I think we should.
discussing it with them.
I think we should talk to them, especially because the area along the wall isn't really part of this project, so they may be taken by surprise if we start kind of taking over the park.
Correct. Yes, and I was thinking, I'd love to do it for that entire area, but in particular for the project area.
Yeah.
To talk about maintenance for that. If you wouldn't mind checking with them. We have a standard condition that prohibits pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, I think. I don't have it in front of me. There may be some fertilizers allowed, I can't recall offhand, but maybe just check on that, that'd be great. And note the comment, Suzanne, about the removal of the berm is noted. That is already in our draft conditions that both you and Robert raised, and I expect that there will be a condition related to removing it. Anyone else from the public wish to comment? Okay, I had one other comment, which is just that I'm disappointed that shrubs could not be included in the rain garden. I don't fully understand why they would be so difficult to maintain, but I'm respectful of the decision for this project, and I'd rather. I don't feel the need to go back and forth with them about it further, but I think it's too bad if there were, similar species shrubs. I mean, plenty of other towns maintain shrubs in rain gardens, and maybe it's just that Braintree is not there. I know Braintree is making a lot of fantastic efforts on stormwater. So maybe my comment is more that I hope that we get to a place in the future where that sort of maintenance would be feasible. So it's sort of a general comment.
No, I would, if I could respond to that. I mean, I can't
Sure,
speak
yeah.
to how the DPW can or can't manage this right now, but if the opinion on that ever changes, it's not a static system, right? So shrubs could always be added in the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. It also just occurs to me as you're saying that when the berm comes out, there's going to be some area that is, still walkway, that footprint may not change. But then there's going to be some area then around that walkway where there may be room for some plantings to go in, presumably very salt tolerant plantings, or maybe it won't be necessary at that point and things will just seed on their own. But there may be future opportunities. Thank you. So I'm thinking it makes sense, since I don't think there's anything else on this project, to just go back to the first project and consider the draft conditions. This is, so we're returning to the shoreline stabilization and salt marsh restoration. Staff has prepared draft comments, draft conditions, excuse me. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments on the conditions specifically? Or is anyone concerned about issuing them this evening?
No, I read them over. I didn't have any issues or comments on the draft conditions.
Thanks, Kim. And I guess I'll just note that these would be, since it seems like no one has objected to considering this as a ecological restoration project. So under the state, the conditions would just be the standard conditions, the specific standard conditions for ecological restoration projects, but then these additional conditions will be under the bylaw. I had one suggestion, or two rather, under condition 26 is about construction sequencing and providing a construction sequencing plan for review and approval. I would also suggest that we have a condition after that, 27, that prior to the start of the work, the site contractor shall provide a detailed construction specifications to the department for review and approval. My thought here is that one of the items that came up was the additional plantings within the existing salt marsh, and that would have to be included in the specifications. So just to make sure that that has an opportunity to be reviewed. Hopefully that will be easy, since it is a town project. And then the second suggestion I had was to have our standard plant survivability clause, requiring that a minimum percentage of plants survive for 2 growing seasons or be replaced. And it's normally 75%, but Elise, could you confirm, is it actually 80% that's in the plan?
I will check on that super quick. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. I can remember a lot of things, but that detail is not in my head right now.
This suggestion kind of came to me at a little bit last moment. So, any other thoughts on the conditions? Okay, then give Elise a moment to check on that, and then we could just perhaps include whatever percentage is already within the plan, just to not make an additional burden, but just to kind of reiterate.
It is written as 80.
Okay, so then it would be 80%, and the rest just sort of the standard language. Okay, so I think we're in a position now that I will move to issue an order of conditions for DEP file number 8-681 for the Watson Park Shoreline Stabilization and Salt Marsh Restoration Project, with conditions as discussed and revised during the meeting. Is there a second, Mr. Hayward?
Second.
Okay. And hang on just a moment. Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm forgetting we have to do a roll call. Commissioner Crowe.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
And Commissioner Francis, are you on the call? Diane, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay, I see you now. I had to scroll over to find you. Do you vote aye or nay? Do you vote aye or nay?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so motion has passed unanimously. And that is 5-0-0, as Commissioner Albrecht is not with us this evening. Okay, so for the second project, I would suggest, unless anyone strongly objects, that although we have these draft conditions, that we wait until the next meeting. We heard the last time that there wasn't as much time sensitivity, and then we could get clarification on whether a few trees may be possible to the southwest of the berm, and also a plan or at least some input on the memorial bench and tree. Does that sound reasonable to commissioners? Okay.
Sure, as long as we have some time to work that over and it doesn't set back a project, absolutely.
All right, and Elise or Kelly, you confirm that time frame would be okay?
We are going to continue moving forward with the other layers of permitting involved with this, but since the next step is actually an Army Corps permit and we're not actually including the upland pieces of this because it's outside of their jurisdiction. I don't know that that really slows us down for this next step at all. So another month is not going to change things one way or the other.
Great, thanks so much for the input. Okay, then in that case, I would offer up a motion to continue this public hearing to our next meeting on October 1st. Is there a second? Commissioner Hayward?
Second.
Commissioner Crowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Francis?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, 5-0. We will see you in a month. Thank you so much. Okay, next we have a
Thank
public
you.
hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a public hearing, new hearing for a request for determination of applicability for 131 Messina Woods Drive. The applicant is Kidd, and is the applicant or representative here to talk about the project?
Let me just make sure we can hear them.
Yes.
Hi, Matt.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, how are you? This is,
Great. You can just
Sorry.
state your name for the record, and then you can proceed. Just tell us whatever you'd like to about the project.
sure. So my name is Matt Kidd, and I'm the owner of 131 Messina Woods Drive. The project is that we are looking to put in a pool in the existing lawn area, which falls in the 50-foot range. I actually have our professional wetland scientist with us on this, and so she actually can go into more of the details on that. But as it relates to any of the specifics around the pool, I'm happy to chime in about that part. So Stacy, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Yes. Thank you, Stacey.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm Stacy Minahan. I'm a professional wetland scientist, as Matt noted. And this is a project that actually had been permitted back in 2014. We submitted a request for determination of applicability to put a pool in the backyard to install a fence. And at the time, the project was begun, but became cost prohibitive. So they did install the fence in the backyard. That was installed in accordance with the conditions. I believe Kelly had come out to inspect the erosion control. It was hand dug. There's essentially an intermittent stream at the rear of their property at the base of a very tall, steep slope. And then at the top of the slope, there's a landscaped area and then the lawn for the property. And so now there's a desire to move forward with the pool project. And unfortunately, the determination has expired since it's been more than 3 years. And so we're back before the commission to essentially permit the same project, except that the fence has already been installed. So now it's the pool and the landscaping area within the lawn. I did go out and look at the stream back in 2014. And again, this past August in association with the current filing. It's fairly straightforward, I think, but we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, great. Thank you to both of you. Excuse me, we have a memo from our staff on this, and there are no issues or questions noted in the memo. Kelly, let us know if you have anything to add. Otherwise, commissioners?
No questions here.
Okay, anyone else?
No, the grass already being there and outside of the 25-foot no disturb area, I don't have any issues beyond the vegetation recommendations that were noted in the memo.
Great, thank you, Chris. And thank you, Kim. And that is my only comment, is just that, I wasn't on the commission at the time that the original proposal was approved, but I see no significant issues with the work, but we now do have this buffer zone protection portion of our regulations, and that is in part why you're seeing the suggestion for some native shrubs as mitigation. My only comment would be that there's recommended condition number 2 says 5 to 6 native shrubs shall be planted, and I would suggest that we change that language to say a minimum of 6 native shrubs. My thought being, not that this would ever happen, I would imagine, but no reason to restrict it to that number if the owner wishes to plant more, but also that it just avoids the ambiguity of the 5 or 6.
Certainly, and if I
Yes.
may, on those 2 items.
Sure.
Okay, so with regard to the shrub plantings, there's no concern about that, and they're happy to do it. The only comment was I was wondering if we could change the condition. So it currently reads prior to the start of work. It'll read a minimum of 6 native shrubs shall be planted in the existing landscape bed or within the proposed landscaping around the pool. I think the preference is to plant those in the proposed landscaping around the pool. And so therefore, if we could strike the prior to the start of work language, because in order to do that, the landscaping would go in once the pool was installed.
Okay, thank you for that input. That's really helpful. I don't have an issue with that. Certainly want the shrubs to survive. Kelly, can you remind me, would you have any sign off on a building permit on this?
In theory, yes. I mean, we're trying to look at the online permit system, make sure we're doing anything that we need to before the permit is issued.
Would you be comfortable with saying prior to the issuance of a building permit, and then continue on with the shrubs being planted in the condition?
I think they'll need the building permit before the pool is installed, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So
you know what? I apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm thinking of an occupancy permit,
yeah.
which I do not believe a pool gets an occupancy permit. So forgive me. I'm just going to take back the entire comment. Okay.
The other thing that might be worth noting, just because you had mentioned that you weren't on the commission before, and obviously there's these buffer regs. At the time in 2014, the 25-foot, I believe that it was in the bylaw. I know it was discussed with the commission. So, you know, it's kind of a moot point, but just so you know that, you know, it was in place back when we permitted it before. So it's a very similar set of circumstances.
Great, thank you. That's helpful to know. We have a little more language in the regulations now, but it's nice to hear that it was, you know, being considered then as well.
Right.
So just to return to this condition, then why don't we just say, you know, following the completion of the pool, the installation of the pool, the native shrubs shall be planted. That way it will be, you know, they'll be able to go in the correct order. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes, we'd appreciate that.
Okay. Since this is a public hearing, at least under our bylaw, I'll ask if there are any members of the public that wish to comment. Raise your hand if you're on the computer, or we'll be unmuting you if you're on the phone.
And then, Madam Chair, after public comment, I had one other question on one of the conditions as well.
Sure. And it seems to me we do not have any public comments, so Stacey, you can go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So for condition 1 regarding the as-built, and Kelly had mentioned this to me, so we were expecting it and understand that if it's the standard now, so be it. Although we would like to avoid the expense of the as-built survey post-construction, because as you can see in the photographs, it'll be very readily able to be discerned if somehow they expanded the footprint, which is really impossible because of that existing landscape fringe and then the existing fence. So if the commission would consider it, we'd certainly be appreciative of avoiding that expense of having to do an as-built survey after construction.
Okay, thank you for the question. This is fairly standard. Kelly, I don't know if you want to confirm or add any information, but it is what we typically do now. Frequently, the as-built guarantee is actually higher, if I'm remembering correctly.
And it's not even necessarily the as-built guarantee, it's more just having to do the as-built survey in general, because I'm sure it will cost more than the $1,000 guarantee, which I understand will be returned once it's done.
Right.
Hopeful, since there's a very clear, you know, fences on either side, fence and landscaping at the back. I think you'll be able to tell very apparently without an actual survey, you know, that the pool hasn't gone beyond the toe of slope there.
So I believe that the as-built, again, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but typically building departments also require an as-built following this sort of work.
In other municipalities, they don't, but I can't speak to Braintree specifically. I don't know if you have any insight, Kelly.
I can't speak to what the building department requires, but I did include it as a standard condition because we've been doing this with all the pool projects we've had recently. But those pool projects did a survey plan to start with. So this is a little different, and maybe we need to reconsider whether we're going to require survey plans across the board for these types of projects to be part of the application.
For this project, I would be comfortable with keeping the guarantee, but having a site visit and a visual inspection of where the pool is and conditioning it on that, which, may or may not give some comfort with it's a little bit more discretionary than the as-built plan, but I think it is fairly clear for this one where the boundaries are and where the anticipated outline of the project will be.
Thanks, Kim. Any other thoughts?
Well,
Okay.
you're kind
Yep.
of comparing, you're going to compare an as-built plan to a sketch, and that has some, iffiness to it in doing that, I think. And I would be okay with Kimberly's suggestion.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Anyone else?
Just
Okay,
guarantee that they're going to do the erosion controls.
Yes, certainly.
yes, thank you, Diane. And I'm comfortable with what's been suggested then with the guarantee, particularly where the project was approved previously in this form and for all the reasons that were stated, basically. So why don't we keep the prior to the start of work, we'll just take out the as-built, but that the guarantee shall be provided. Let me just look at the language here. To ensure the work is completed in compliance with the determination, perhaps, instead of the receipt of an as-built plan.
That would
And
be
then the second sentence could stay the same. Okay. All right. If there's nothing further, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to issue the negative determination of applicability for 131 Messina Woods Drive with conditions as drafted and amended during the meeting. Is there a second? Commissioner Hayward?
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Commissioner Crowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Francis,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, 5-0, and I make a motion to close the public hearing for 131 Messina Woods Drive. Second,
Second.
thank you, Commissioner Hayward, Commissioner Crowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Francis,
Aye.
and Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous again, 5-0. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your consideration on those conditions.
You are welcome.
Have a good night.
Okay, you as well. All right, so next we have a notice of intent. The DEP file number is pending, and the location is 40 Arnold Street, also known as 71 Adams Street, and the applicant is the Adams Street LLC. I know that we have representatives on the call / at the meeting, so when you're ready, you can proceed. Just state your name and affiliation for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Brian Palmucci. I'm the attorney representing the applicant in this matter, Adams Street Enterprises LLC, who seeks to redevelop and improve the area of Adams Street, which has been the site of the Graziano cement plant for the past many decades. With me this evening, and sitting next to me here is George Lang, who is the principal of Adams Street Enterprises. We also have Sean Hardy and Garrett Tunison, and I'll be providing a brief introduction of the project and then turn it over to Garrett and Sean for further presentation. We're seeking to construct a first-class commercial development that we call Riverside Business Park. If approved, we'll construct 2 commercial buildings and utilize 2 pre-existing buildings for a total approximate size of 200,000 square feet of light manufacturing, office, contractor, warehouse space, and warehouse space on the property. The proposal represents a significant improvement of the property over its current condition and use. As the members might recall or might know, this is a very large site at 14 acres. It's triangular in shape, bordered by the MBTA Railway, and the Manaquit River, and Arnold Street. The challenge of this site, as it currently exists, is ecological contamination in the form of auto shred residue, ASR, in certain areas of the property. And auto shred residue is exactly what it sounds like. It's shredded up auto parts like dashboards and seats and things of that nature. At some point in time, this material was buried in areas around the site. Our environmental approach to this project has always been to limit the disturbance of this material as much as possible and cap it where it exists on site. We've worked collaboratively with both the Department of Environmental Protection and the Environmental Protection Agency to formulate a remediation plan that addresses the environmental challenges on the site. If approved, the Riverside Business Park would consist of an existing 1,300 square foot office building, an existing 12,000 square foot warehouse, and the construction of a 50,000 square foot contractor space building, and the construction of a 140,000 square foot building that would house 70,000 square feet of light manufacturing space and 70,000 square feet of warehouse space. The project will bring with it many improvements and benefits to the town. First, the costly environmental remediation and restoration of the site will be borne by the developer. The tax revenue generated by the site would be approximately $450,000 on an annual basis. We propose to create as well a publicly accessible river walk along the length of the property for the community to access and enjoy. And the project would also see Arnold Street improve significantly to facilitate adequate access to the property for vehicles, utilities, and pedestrians, which will benefit the existing businesses on Arnold Street. In terms of the abutting residences, of which there are several, the development is a vast improvement over the previous cement plant operation at the site. There'll be significant reduction in off-site impacts from noise, odor, smoke, dust, vibration, and glare. All of the activities on the site would be conducted indoors compared to the outdoor activity that has historically taken place at the site. And when we had the previous community meetings on this and speaking with neighbors in and around the site throughout the development of this plan, we've heard that from many neighbors that they believe the activity at this location that's historically taken place there has caused asthma and other health issues among neighbors. So this would certainly improve that. We'll also improve the traffic signals at Elm Street, at Middle Street, the traffic signals at Elm and Middle Street, and then at Elm, Adams, and Hawthorne Road, which will improve traffic flow throughout the whole area. I know it's not kind of what we're here tonight, but I figured I'd give you the overview of the project. As you likely already know, our project team has been working on this for several years now. We've been before this board about this site on several occasions over the past 4 years. Previously, you've approved our plans to clear up existing orders of conditions that have been left unsatisfied by the prior owners. This is a very challenging site due to the environmental conditions of the ASR, the auto shredder residue on site. And our aim, again, has always been to disturb as little of the ASR as possible and to cap it in place on site. The plans that we present tonight are based almost exclusively on your prior approvals of the past times we've been before you, as well as your guidance on the site and how we should be addressing the issues under your purview as we move forward. That includes the issues regarding compensatory flood storage design that I expect we'll get into tonight. Taking into account this board's prior approvals and the DEP guidance, we believe this project, as designed, meets all appropriate town and state standards and represents a major benefit for the town. So I'd like to turn it over to Garrett Tunison at this point, who can tell you a little bit more about our plans, and then we'll have Sean Hardy tell you a little bit more as well. We'll be happy to take any questions. So Garrett?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Garrett, do you want to, who wants to share their screen? Garrett and Sean, or?
Garrett and Sean will be sharing the screen.
Steve, can you enable Garrett to share his screen?
Yep, no problem.
Where'd you go? Okay. Where's screen sharing on here? I don't see it. Is it, is there anything I have to press, or is it just automatic?
Go to the bottom of the screen on mine. If you go to the bottom of the screen, and hover over it, then the option pops up to share screen, but I'm not sure if yours is set up the same way.
Hold on.
I have to hover over the bottom of the Zoom window. Yes, it looks like
Yeah, it's
here.
up now, it looks like. Okay,
We can see your screen now.
okay. Good evening. I'm Garrett Tunison, and I want to start out this evening by just giving you a very brief description of the history of the site, the resource areas that are being impacted by the project, and then the restorations that we're proposing, along with the remediation activities. So the site has been highly disturbed or even devastated for approximately the last 55 to 70 years. Through the concrete batch plant, and also there is a screening operation or area where you can come and drop off your construction debris or landscaping debris, and it's being screened and separated and then resold. So primarily it's been a batch plant. And if you look at the aerial photos, the site was really devastated in the 1960s and early through the 70s. When the majority of the site was cleared, it was cleared all the way down to the riverbank. And between 1966 and 1969, it appears that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers came in and rerouted a significant section of the river along the, it would be the northeastern portion of the property where it abuts the river. So the river channel was rerouted in that location. The spoil piles were tossed up on top of the property. Also, the owner at the time received fill material for the site, which contained the ASR, auto shredder residue, and that was spread, it was graded across the certain areas of the site. And that is the reason why we have to perform the site remediation as part of the project moving forward in the restoration. So the project itself will alter approximately 36,590 square feet of bordering land subject to flooding, the 100-year floodplain, and 73,180 cubic feet. Under the project, we're proposing to create 50,490 square feet of compensatory storage, or 106,620 cubic feet of compensatory storage. The total riverfront area on the property is approximately 422,372 square feet. Of that, approximately 110,795 square feet will be altered in the 0 to 100 foot buffer riverfront area, and a good portion of that is the ecological restoration and the remediation, and also in the outer 1 to 200 foot area of the riverfront, we're altering 174,745 square feet. Now these areas are part of that highly disturbed, devastated area that have been compacted and pretty much don't contain any native vegetation and are covered with piles of material and the current operation and stored construction vehicles and site vehicles. As part of the remediation, we will also be altering 213 square feet of the mean annual high water to the Manatequit River. It's a very small area, and that's in the northeastern corner of the property at the base of the riverbank. So that would be remediated. There's also 66 linear feet of bank in 2 areas that we would be impacting. These are just temporary impacts, short term. And that would be for the remediation, but also to remove what there's currently a concrete pump house structure on the river. It looks like it was used to pump water for the site a while ago. We want to take out that building as part of the restoration. The restoration will consist of 610 shrubs and trees. It's 411 shrubs and 199 trees to be planted. All native species, and they're included on the planting plan in your notice of intent package. As far as the remediation, the area of the embankment, there's two major locations. There's one in the northwestern portion of the site. That area, there's existing lawn for the house at on Arnold Street, and then there's a couple areas there along the bank of the Manatequit River that are on top of, underneath, or on the northern side outside the project area where we found the ASR. And these areas will have to be remediated. They will be removed. Clean fill, it's the upper 3 feet, will be removed, and clean fill will be put in its place in the, basically in the soil horizons from what we found from what looks like native material for there and around the site. We will restore that. And the specs on that are also included in the ecological restoration plan. Then the other area is the one along the Manatequit River in the northeastern portion of the site, where we're also going to have to remove the upper 3 feet of material and replace that with clean material. Again, it's spec'd for the soil horizons, and that were relative to what we found on the site that would be natural. And the area that we compared them to was up in the southeastern corner. That's natural. So that's the only area that we found where there were old, large diameter, old growth trees. And that's where we found that soil, and that's what we were considering to be more or less native to the site before it was highly disturbed. The erosion controls that we'd utilize in this area would be core logs we have to put down at the base of the where the bank is to the river. And we're working from just above the bank in most areas up to the top of the slope. So that area we would put mid-slope, we would put a coconut, we'd put another core log. And of course, I don't know if everyone knows what a core log is. It's basically like a coconut blanket that's rolled up, and it looks like a log. It's elongated, and that's used for erosion control, especially to reduce any type of flow velocity, so that erosion doesn't happen. So that's basically what it is, and it's staked in place. At the base, we would use live willow stakes. The base of the where a slope where the river is located. And then further up, we would just use standard 3-foot stakes or 4-foot stakes. And it would be trenched. So there would be a mid-slope erosion control line and then one at the top. And the areas that were to be exposed, where we would be replacing the soil, those will be covered with a coconut matting. So, or erosion control blanket, and they would be anchored with 6-inch steel ground staples. And I always choose those because they break down organically, and because they have the hoop, they really hold the blanket in place. So once the blanket would go in, it would be the area would be seeded, and then the shrubs and trees will be planted, and it would be seeded in accord with the ecological restoration plan. Now, a portion of this plan is also to remove the invasive plant species, which are dominant, prolific throughout the riverfront area between the projects, the existing active area of the site, and the base of the riverbank. In these areas, we have included a invasive plant species eradication plan. And it's pretty much a standard plan. Anything that can be weeded would be weeded. Anything that's large and woody would be the way we would address those. And also Japanese knotweed would be to cut the plant and treat it with herbicide directly dabbed onto the stalk. And that would occur during mid-September to mid-October. right before the plant goes dormant for the winter, and it would absorb the herbicide and store it in its with its sugars in the root system. So that's the most effective time to address invasives where we have to do a cut and treat method. And then those areas where it'll be treated, those areas are outside of the remediation area. The areas that are being remediated, we will try to do that, but if the remediation would occur in the spring, we would remove cut the trees and the large shrubs, make sure that we drop tarps and make sure that nothing, if there's any seeds, would go anywhere. Remove that material, the slash, remove the tarps, clean them off, do it again until we have the invasives out of those areas. Then excavate, make sure the roots and any of the stumps and roots, stalks would be removed. And then the material removed under the guidance of the LSP. And once it's approved, he says it's okay, and the material gets put back, then we'll stabilize and plant. Now, these areas would be done in small sections. I don't foresee opening up any more than 1/4 of an acre at any one time. And before, probably less than that, maybe even 1/8 of an acre, because by the end of the workday, it should be stabilized and restored if we can do that as we're moving along, so that no areas are left without erosion control, any steep slopes. So there are no issues with if we got a large rain event to impact the river. So this is the way I've done this in the past, and I haven't had issues as long as we work together. The three groups of people would be out there. It'd be remediation, ecological restoration, and the actual landscape crew to make sure everything is done, or construction crew, so that everything would be done in accord with the invasive invasive species eradication plan and the ecological restoration plan. So that's pretty much what we have for the planting plan, except for the area where the river walk would occur. We're proposing 8 inkberries, 4 on each side of the walkway that goes out to the overlook area. The overlook area would contain picnic bench, 2 picnic benches, and a picnic table, so that people could sit there and enjoy, the scenery and could view the river. The area where the overlook area is proposed actually sticks out. It's where the river meanders out. So the river would be if someone were facing north, the river would be slightly to their left, their right, and in front of them. So they'll get a pretty good view at that location. Some vista pruning will be required, and there's also a maintenance plan for that included in the ecological restoration plan. So that's pretty much it for the overview of the project that I was going to explain tonight. The other would be in regards to the questions that we received, recent questions. I would first like to ask Sean Hardy or Chi Man if they'd like to add anything to the overview of the project before we go into the questions. Sean?
Sure. Actually, Gary, I don't know, your screen share, and I don't think anyone's actually seen plans yet, so I might try at least doing that if I can.
Go ahead.
Steve, to enable you to share.
Yeah, I did that. So, and this is from the plan set. This is just, it's an index sheet, but it's the one sheet that we have. It's a very substantial plan set, but this gives you the overall site. And I know some of you that have been on the commission for a while know where we are, what we're talking about. But so the Manattaquit River is here on the, plan north on the upside. Adams Street is up, at the top of the page. Arnold Street over here to the left. The existing warehouse or garage, I guess, is to stay over here, as Attorney Palmucci said. And the other existing building it looks like a house, but they use it as an office space kind of just inside. That's proposed to stay. Then the batch plant is going to be torn down. And this is the contractor bay that was talked about. It's like a mixed use with garage doors and some office space. And then into the rear of the site is the warehouse space. As Garrett was saying, up here with the parking behind the existing garage area, some public parking, and then access to this walkway. Back here in the middle of the site was what Garrett was talking about with the overlook and some of the picnic table type thing, and to be able to look at the river. That's it overall as far as that goes. Certainly we have grading and drainage plans. It's proposed to collect the surface and the roof runoff and treat it through storm scepter units and infiltrate with overflow going to the river. The other, Garrett, I don't have the exact specifics on, but certainly the riverfront restoration is all along this whole area. As you guys have seen it, and I think you've seen aerial photos, you know that this place is pretty disturbed. It's got invasives all over the place. So Garrett did a great job with that. I am going to scroll hopefully forward to a grading plan, so bear with me. So grading and drainage plan, as you all know, this is in the flood zone associated with the Manatequit. So it had been the subject of a few notice of intents that we've done back for the original when there was a proposal to tear down the existing batch plant and put in a new state-of-the-art batch plant and the warehouse. The batch plant was never demolished and the new batch plant wasn't constructed, but this garage was. So this was a subject of a more recent notice of intent that I think at the same time after the ANRAD, when we established what the floodplain was and what the wetland line was, Garrett had filed that and got that approved. Out of that came the realization that while that garage was built, the compensatory flood storage that was required as part of that project was not built. So a notice of intent was filed at that time and showed compensatory storage in order to hopefully bring that into compliance. That also was not constructed because George took ownership of the project. So this now filing, we are proposing similar. So we are certainly this site, as you know, through the ANRAD, we are filling in the flood zone and we are proposing to compensate for that. Our compensatory storage proposed is in two areas, sort of here just behind this existing office building is an area that we were proposing that goes, have to zoom in because I can't remember. It's about between elevation 45 and 48 as a compensatory flood storage area. And then there's an existing wetland just underneath these tracks that this is another area that has.
Spoke up on a Zoom meeting. It's scary.
Okay. This area here is an existing flood zone and over in this area as well. So we're proposing to compensate in this same area. We did receive comments. Well, a couple of things. When we had filed this, I know we had received comments. There was a peer review that was done jointly under planning board as well as for this commission. And we received numerous comments regarding some stormwater issues and the floodplain issue. We've gone through most of the we are prepared to respond to those and informally and revise the plans. We didn't want to do that until we had one hearing with the Conservation Commission and one hearing with planning, because we wanted to hear what the commissions had in addition to whatever those peer review comments were. We have gone through them, and for the most part, I think we're prepared to revise. We have revised the plans and we'll be resubmitting them next week. In incorporating many of the stormwater comments and other comments from the peer review. One issue is the flood zone or the compensatory storage. And to the point that I know, and Garrett can probably step in again, when we filed this with the DEP, we had brought attention to the fact that there was potentially a conflict between our interpretation and the peer review's interpretation of the compensatory flood storage issue. And we asked them to take special note of that. And when they issued the file number, they did not call that out as being an issue. So they did not comment on that. I don't know whether silence is in agreement with us or not, but I just make note of that. I will say that we also had a Zoom call and follow-up memo from the peer review, who I know is on here and is probably going to be speaking after us. But I based my compensatory flood storage calculations on what we had done previously through the previous submittals and approvals, as well as guidance on a DEP document from a seminar from 2017 to the Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners. As if you remember, the flood zone is staggered on this. It ranges from way down here to the east of the site at about elevation 41, stays consistent till around the middle. It jumps to elevation 45, and then it graduates up to about 48, where Adams Street meets Arnold Street. My compensatory storage is in this area here, where according to that flood profile is at about approximate elevation, base flood elevation 46. I base that on the requirement of the storage being hydraulically connected to the river as well as in the same reach. And if I may share that, I have that as well. This is that study from the Mass DEP, or from the Mass DEP. I can scroll up to the cover page so you guys can see what it is. So Tom McGuire, Mass DEP, Wetlands Program, MACC Fall Conference, October 2017, bordering land subject to flooding, how to determine their extent and meet performance standards. There's a lot of how to read flood maps and whatnot. But then down here, for the performance standards, I'm gonna find my page again.
41.
There it is. Yep. Okay. So it says same reach. Reach is not defined in the wetlands regulations, but the same reach is a length of stream located between two confluences, two culverts, or two road crossings, provided the characteristics are heterogeneous. And they show in the picture here, reach A is what's above this roadway crossing, and reach B is what's below that roadway crossing. They say a uniform cross section, similar elevation, same slope are examples of heterogeneous characteristics. Same reach does not refer to reaches in the FEMA study. So that seems to indicate exactly what our site is. And I'm going to click to the flood profile, which is what the base flood, which is what the flood maps are. So our site in the Manatic River is bordered by, and this is reverse because they based zero at the left of the page as the confluence down where it's the backwater down by Commercial Street. But our site is bound, and the reach that is I have considered is between Adams Street and the railroad bridge down to the east of the site. So our section of river, or our reach of river, is bounded by that. It is of a similar characteristics, meaning it's roughly the same width. It's generally the same slope, and I feel it meets that definition of what was presented, and I've done a lot of research. This is what I based it on originally, and since that time when the question was asked, I've done a lot of research, and I think this is basically the only document you're going to find out of Massachusetts anyway that kind of defines this. So that's how I came up, like I said, with the compensatory flood storage, both because that's what has been previously approved by this commission, as well as it complies with at least my reading of that document from the DEP. Again, I can show other states have similar guidance and similar things. One that was of interest, and I know Rhode Island is not Massachusetts, but they have they had done the same thing. they went so far as to show a, that same exact FEMA map and call it out specifically because it was between two roadways and things like that. So I think that what I'm basically saying is I think overall our plans are ready to be revised, barring major questions from this commission, basically in line with what the peer review had asked as far as the stormwater goes. But we are asking the commission to weigh in on how to interpret this base flood elevation and this compensatory storage, because it's a pretty important issue, as both as far as for the performance standards go and the environment, but as far as the project goes, if what the peer review is asking us to do is what the commission directs us to do, then I guess what the change will be is this area here that is currently proposed as a compensatory flood storage will certainly have to be altered. It will come up this direction towards Adams Street. It will further go into an area that has been shown to have contaminated soil. It will probably impact the location of the Riverwalk as well as the public parking, because that is the area that is the 48s and the 47s for elevation. Again, engineering wise, I guess that's a question that we're asking you guys to weigh in on as the commission. Overall, like I said, we agree for the most part for the other issues with the peer review. But as I said, I based my compensatory flood storage depiction or my proposal on both what was previously agreed on for this site by this commission a few times, as well as by this document. And I had forwarded this to Kelly a number of weeks back as a result of our Zoom call. But I think that this page 41 of this document is pretty clear that our proposed compensatory storage follows what this document is telling us. Thank you. I don't know if anyone, whether Garrett or even if Chi or Brian, anybody?
Thank you, Sean. I just, so we, as Sean had said, we would be looking for some guidance this evening from the commission as to whether or not, essentially what interpretation the commission takes regarding the compensatory flood storage. The project is really unable to move forward until some indication is given to us as to how best to proceed. We're happy to proceed either in either way, whether it be that the commission endorses the methodology and the statutory opinion of the peer review, or whether the commission endorses our methodology that's been the basis of the prior approvals from the Conservation Commission. In either scenario, we will work with that. It doesn't kill the project in any way. We think that the methodology that Sean just presented to you is the more appropriate methodology, meets the standards for both the town and the DEP, as well as allows us to not dig into that area of known contamination. And we know that from the beginning, the town has always said that the Riverwalk was a significant benefit to the town and wanted us to keep the Riverwalk. Some of you may remember this project started 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a residential development, and the Riverwalk was incorporated as an amenity for the residents. When that proposal was met with opposition by neighbors, we went to a commercial proposal here, and the town vehemently asked us, expressed their interest in keeping the Riverwalk to be available to the public. So we've done that. But we would lose a portion of the Riverwalk here if we were to do it the different way, as well as the public parking. So that would be our request tonight, is for some guidance as to what the Conservation Commission believes the direction we should be traveling in relative to the compensatory flood storage.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If I may, I'd like to share
I'm sorry,
couple
who's
screen with
who's speaking now? Is this
commissions,
um,
and
This
I
is
think
Chi Man,
that
he's
will
one
be
of our
Chi-Man
project
helpful
engineers.
to show you guys. By
can
the way,
you
my
please
name
state
is
your name for the
my
record?
name is Chi
Thank you.
Man from Hardy Pasman Design Group, part of the civil engineering
Thank
design
you.
team.
Sure, you may proceed. Thank you very much.
Seems to be frozen. Oh, there he goes.
He swore to us that he upgraded his internet in advance of this meeting.
So if I may, I have a couple plan we can share to better give you better understanding, our strategies of for the site remediations.
Stephen, will you let Chi-Man share his screen?
So here on the screen, what we have is show the along the bank here, like the red hatch area is pretty much the area we have to remediate. It's an area behind the existing two-family house that's going to remain. Our strategy is try to not to disturb that area as much as possible, and not to open up the ground that much. Kept those soil on site, especially close to the bank, and so whatever we come up with the soil remediations, we are relocating within the site into some consolidation area. Some of it is going to cap under the building, where the blue hatch area is. And then this, the proposed compensatory storage area would be soil cover in compliance to DEP regulations. So if we have to do the so-called compensatory storage area around behind the two-family house here, we feel that there will be a lot more disturbance of the soil, and the close proximity to the two-family house, rather than the open area that's commercial use and that be kept. That's one of the reasons we want to design the compensatory storage area further away from the two-family house. Other than that, I have some existing conditions of the site to share. This is how the site looked today. As Garrett described, it's heavily disturbed. And we have a rendering show what the site would look like, with the restoration and landscaping and the new building is going to be 100% improvement. And a different angle looking at the site. If you're not familiar with the site, the existing warehouse, the batch plants here, and pretty much you can see the whole entire site has been disturbed. And this is just another renderings of the proposed conditions of the finished products of the projects. So, and I guess we are open up to the commission for any comments or questions.
Okay, thank you very much to the team for the comprehensive overview of the project. We appreciate it. I'd like to let commissioners comment now if you'd like to, but I also want to acknowledge that we have the peer review team, or at least some staff who conducted the peer review from Beta on the line. We could also hear from them first. Any commissioners have a strong preference? Okay.
Vote for the peer reviewer first, if you're looking for
Okay, that sounds good to me as well. I just want to make sure. It's been a while without an opportunity to speak, so if you had something burning that you wanted to say now, we'll give you a chance. So I I see a couple, at least one person from Beta.
Yes.
If you'd like to, Phil Paradis, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your last name, but if you would like to state your name for the record and share with us whatever you would like to from your review, we would appreciate it.
Excellent. So yes, thanks for the introduction. My name is Phil Paradis with Beta Group. We've been tasked by the Office of Planning and Community Development to review this project on behalf of the town here. And we just, so a lot of the, so we developed a peer review letter reviewing pretty much the stormwater, kind of the floodplain impacts, and also kind of some environmental considerations relative to the car parts issue. And so the subsequent to that, we, as Sean mentioned, we had a meeting, a virtual meeting, mostly because we came up with considerably different numbers relative to flood storage and compensation numbers. And although I think a lot of the comments, other comments relative to stormwater management and other issues related to this project are readily addressable, the flood compensation has a little history. And unfortunately, we are just on the new end of this process. We understand that this site has gone under considerable review of the, considerable change over time. And so we were provided, if I can share my screen, I would like to show kind of what the basis of our review is based on, which we were given direct. Let's see if I can share this screen. Can you see this plan?
Yes,
So
we
this is-
can.
Okay, so this is a plan that was provided for us to, as a basis for the kind of what we would, as a basis for where the compensation or the contours and relative to flood storage is to be based on. And so if you look closely, some of the hatched areas are that were within the floodplain. And it's a kind of a unique issue, is that the culvert under Adams Street is I think the primary culprit for some of the floodplain in this area, in that it's too small. And during flooding events, the water cascades over Adams Street and then floods overland until it can get back into the river as it gets down to the lower reaches here. And as Sean indicated, that up here prior to the bridge, the flood elevation is at 50, it goes to 49 here, 48, 47, 46, down to about 45 here, and then kind of flattens out and eventually gets down to 42 here. So I think there was a discussion prior to our arrival on the scene that the topo, which I think this represents a 1993 topo, would have to be kind of restored relative to the floodplain, because after that, the buildings up here were, the site was disturbed up here, and fill was added up in the upper reaches of this flood storage area. So, and as Sean said, the compensation area, if I can share another CAD drawing here, I don't know if I can do this. it's not letting me share another screen. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is it's a similar, this is a CAD drawing of that plan. Again, the areas that are shaded up here are significant, were filled after 1993 in order to put in the warehouse building here and the road and some of the work here associated with the plan. There are also spot areas where flood compensation was filled, or no, this is areas that are below the flood elevation, and it's kind of a unique look in that it's stepped. It's not like this is elevation 49 and this is 48, but only this area that's 48 and below was counted as flood storage. So you'll see it stops at the 48 line. So anything below, so in this here, it's above 47, but below 48. And so there's no flood storage here except over here. And then there's an area in the center of the site. If you've been out there, you remember this area that's kind of low in between the buildings and would be subject to flooding should an event of sizable rainfall occur. And then there's again issues. So anything above 45, if you can see the contour here, 45 is this. So this would be below 45. So this, this would be the flood storage, and this particular reach from what we call reach, and so that's how we based our base flood elevation, and you can see again the flood storage area is substantial on the upper end of this project. When you go to look at the proposed, let me see if I can get to the proposed. So the proposed, can you see that? Oops, what I just clicked? I clicked something wrong. All right, where are we? Is this? No, that's the old one. Oh, let me get back there. All right, let me close some of these other ones. Maybe. Can you? What are you seeing now? Are you seeing this plan? This plan?
We're seeing that it says that you've started screen sharing, so perhaps it's just taking a moment.
Oh, okay.
Or you might still have to choose the screen. Sometimes that's kind of the waiting thing.
All right, let me stop sharing again. I'm just trying to. It's been working up to this point, so. All right. It's not showing the right plan though. It's showing the wrong. Let me move this over here. I get two screens, so let me just.
So we're still seeing that you've started screen sharing. Now,
All right,
now we're not seeing you at all.
CAD's locked up. So let me go to, let me do one more, let me try one other thing. I'll see if I can open the plans.
Given the unusual meeting circumstances, I don't think everything's going that badly so far. We've been able to see most everything. So if you need to take a minute, it's okay.
I tried to shut the VPN off. I don't know if that made a difference, but. All right, let me see if I can get to the proposed plans of PDFs. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can do that. Does that work?
So we're seeing that you started screen sharing, and now we see a plan.
Okay.
This looks like the proposed condition.
So unfortunately, this plan does not have the divides that the previous plan does. But if you remember, the upper portion is at 98 on the just a down gradient of Adams Street, and it drops to about 90. 48, and then at 47 about here, and then 46, and then 45 is like perpendicular to the bottom here. So there's a significant amount of fill above the 47-ish to 49 in this area of the site. What Sean has done is he's developed this compensation area, which is fairly significant and is obviously beneficial, but he's assumed that, so we assume that this only would compensate for anything that would be in that elevation, like, so between 46 and 47. So there's not a whole lot of compensation. He assumed that it's up to the 49 that was way up here. And let me show you from a profile standpoint what that means. Can you see this profile?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay. So what has happened is that the upper portion of this is the bridge. I mean this is the Adams Street culvert. So this fill has been placed up here on this upper reach of the thing, so that which it causes the water elevation to be higher up here, because the water's flowing from right to left on this screen, and it wants to go downhill. So if it's restricted because there's more flood, it's going to back up in this direction, in the upstream direction. By putting the compensation down here on the lower reach, it doesn't really help the flooding up on and across Adams Street, because it's not. And I understand what Sean's saying in terms of the between reaches and kind of a reach to here. Typically, the culverts or stream crossings are what typically control the flood elevation. However, this is, as you can see, the 100-year flood drops significantly in a fairly short distance for floodway standards. So this is not really homogeneous. Like if this were level, I would have no problem in him, compensating on the down, on the within the same area. However, that is not the case. So he's not really, the water will never get up high enough for him to reach the 48 to store the water there, because there's relief below. I don't know if that makes sense. So that's how we calculate it. We calculated it by a reach to reach impact. We feel that in order for the site to be brought to this equilibrium is that the flood compensation needs for this particular area needs to be in this area. And subsequently, as you go down, it needs to be at a foot by foot basis in that particular area because there is such a difference in gradient relative to the floodplain. So,
if I may, can I?
Thank you very much.
Can I respond a bit, Madam Chairman?
Yes, Sean, if you want to respond, that's fine. This issue seems significant enough that it's worth all, talking about it and
yeah,
making a decision
so
tonight.
I guess a couple things, and I've said this a bunch of times, and I know that the commission and anyone who's been out and seen how this area floods and that profile that was just shown there with the red and the blue lines a moment ago indicates it. This area floods because the water cannot get under Adams Street. It comes up, it comes over the bridge, and it comes down Arnold Street and comes into this site. And we talked about this at the time when we filed and we got an ANRAD and those lines and that plan that's up there now with those shaded areas, that was the basis of the ANRAD. That came through a lot of meetings with, at the time, the town engineer and Kelly and myself, a lot of meetings, and and even the profile showed it. And the reason why that flood profile drops significantly after Adams Street is because Adams Street is the reason that area floods. It can't make it through that culvert. That is a further example of what I showed on that DEP document of what is considered a reach. The reach of this property is between Adams Street and the next restriction, which is the railroad bridge. The water can't physically get under that culvert. It comes up over Adams Street, it comes down Arnold Street, and any one of those neighbors, and I'm sure there's some even on the call and can speak to you, the water is not coming up out of the river on the downside of Adams Street. It's coming up over through the condo complex across the way. There's a dentist office, tax office, insurance companies over there in that little industrial or the commercial condos. And that's how this area floods. And the profile kind of goes on and mimics that. To say reach, meaning between base elevation 45 and 46, and then 46 to 47, that goes against, again, the one document that I've seen come out of the DEP is that MACC conference in 2017, and I've tried calling the gentleman a bunch of times and he hasn't gotten back to me, and I know that they're all remote and working crazy hours and just like the rest of us. It's not that surprising I haven't heard from him, but that document, barring anybody else, or barring being able to speak to the gentleman who put that document together, I think is pretty clear. It mimics what the flood profile that was just shown, and I can show it again. I'm a little confused at what Phil was showing because that red line, it seemed like he was showing that I was filling on something, but that was not a finished grade or an existing grade in that profile. I think that was like a 1% chance of flooding or something that red line represented. So, I have the same profile and I can go back to that as well. This again is this is the flood profile. So this is Adams Street. This line here, hold on, 2% annual chance of flooding. So the single data, it's because it can't get through under the Adams Street culvert. That's why it floods. And then it does come down pretty quickly. That's because there's no more restriction. And then the next place that it floods further down here at the railroad bridge, you can see it does the same thing. It can't get through that railroad bridge, and once it does, it comes down again pretty quickly. This area is the reach. The restriction of the railroad bridge is what is the bottom of our reach, and the Adams Street restriction is the top of our reach. And again, this document, the MACC, this is to the Association of Conservation Commissioners. This is telling people in your situations how they're supposed to interpret things and how they're supposed to enforce and make sure the performance standards are being met. Same reach, a length of stream located between two confluences, two culverts, or two road crossings. And and here's the picture, reach A, and it's crossed, and what divides it is a road crossing, and reach B. Same reach does not refer to reaches in the FEMA study. So not only does it say what I have shown or what I interpret seems to be correct, it says a reach is not between elevation 45 and 46 and 46 and 47. It gives a picture that says my interpretation meets this document, and then it goes so far as to say that it does not mean that those separations between those base flood elevations that were previously discussed. It specifically says not refer to reaches in the FEMA study. So between that and between what has been previously approved by this commission, and between, again, you guys I know have history, you've certainly been out here probably, and anyone with DPW, and I know Kelly's been around long enough to know when this thing floods, we've seen it. And it comes over Adams Street, it comes down Arnold Street, it swoops through the property of Graziano, and then it gets back as fast as it can to the river. So that's why I feel what we've shown is both consistent with DEP, the only guidance document I could find, but it's also consistent with what has been previously approved, as well as what anyone who's witnessed flooding knows how this occurs. So that's why I'm asking your guidance, but I'm strongly suggesting that what we have shown meets the criteria.
Thank you very much, Sean. I'd like to let the commission discuss this issue now. However, Phil, would you mind just very briefly telling us what the two colored lines were on the flood profile that you showed us, just to clarify, since that question came up?
So, yes, so let me share this. So the challenge is it's not easy to depict it on a profile. But what Sean said is the truth in terms of this river floodway, is that it comes over the bridge, comes over the road, and wants to get back into the river. However, because they've filled this upper reach, there's less opportunity for the floodway to spread out and then get back into the river at this elevation. So he's filling this up here further restricts the flow from this upgradient thing. So that's what I was trying to show in the profile, that because you're filling it, you're going to back up the flow on the opposite side of Adams Street. And then once it gets past here, once it gets past the restriction, it drops fairly significantly. So when they put their compensation area in this area, it's not going to get up to the elevation of 48 or 49 that they're wanting to mitigate for, because there's nothing holding it back.
That plan does not show what has been filled. That plan is not showing what has been filled. That's the basis.
Excuse me.
So I think maybe at this point, obviously there's different opinions.
That's not even an opinion. He's showing the plan.
I'm talking about general hydrologic and river characteristics.
Yeah, but you pointed to the ANRAD plan and said that area has been filled. It hasn't been filled. That plan that you're
No,
showing is the basis of the ANRAD plan that shows what is the flood zone.
yeah, and
Anything that's been filled.
this is filled now.
Okay,
That may or may not be.
I'm going to actually cut in here at this point. I really appreciate all the effort on this, the whole project, but this specific topic. I know this is not easy, and I know there are differing opinions. And I think the commission should talk about it and see if we can come to some agreement ourselves on how we feel it makes sense to move forward. There's been fill all over the site, but I know that I recognize that as the ANRAD plan, and I can comment on that as well because it was on the commission when that was approved. But I just want to open it to the Conservation Commission. If anyone would like to comment, maybe we could keep our comments initially focused on the resource areas and in particular this floodplain issue, and then go from there. Does anyone want to dive in first, or do you want me to state my opinion?
I'll step in.
Okay, Peter.
I'm not as familiar with this site, but I mean, I'm not getting the, from the plans, is all the project site located within a base flood elevation flood zone?
The short answer is no, but I'll let I'll let Sean perhaps, or somebody from the team answer the question.
Well, I guess the question would be is that it seems that the limit of the floodplain is not clearly shown in the plan, and that definitely has to be addressed. My next question would be, what is the limit of the floodway on the site?
So I don't believe that that's shown on the plan either, but Sean, I'll let you respond.
We did submit the ANRAD as part of the plan set, so I can probably pull that up to give you what that is.
So while you're pulling that up, just to sort of save time, I'm just going to reiterate Peter's point that the NRED plan is helpful, but I do think the BLSF as determined by the ANRAD should also be shown on the appropriate plans within the new plan set. It's just very hard otherwise to go back and forth between the two, especially since it changes.
Yeah.
All right, then I think we can hold off on that.
Okay, so Peter, why don't you go ahead and continue?
Okay, I guess one of the things, just in use of this property, I guess I just would like to know if is there going to be any storage material outside of buildings?
No, there is not.
Okay. I guess the other question, the big question I have is, I mean, you seem to be arguing about reaches and everything, but the first performance standard in the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, Section 1057(4), bordering land subject to flooding, says that the compensatory storage has to be equal by elevation, and you're not providing that. Is that correct?
No, I believe I am.
Okay.
And I believe the peer review, the comment from the peer review and the subsequent letter from the peer review, I believe I am providing it on a foot-by-foot basis. Peer review is not giving me credit because I have some of that compensatory storage in an area that has a base flood elevation lower than the elevation of my compensatory storage. Because I can call it up again. I have the ANRAD now. If you would let me show it, and I can just briefly show you.
You can show it.
So this, again, it's an existing conditions plan, but so this is the ANRAD plan. And so the floodway area is along here. It's pretty close to the river, but right here, the base flood elevation is 45. Then it comes to 46. Then it goes to 47, 48, 49 just before it goes to Adams Street. So it's a graduated flood zone. And I am taking and showing my compensatory storage generally in this area between base flood elevation 45 and 46, and providing flood storage for higher elevations, 47, 48. And again, I did that based on the DEP document that I showed earlier. I don't know.
I'm not sure that that pertains.
Right.
Thanks, Sean. That's helpful.
And is,
I'm sorry, I'll bring it up again if you want.
No, Peter, you can go ahead if you wanted, Peter.
So is that dash line, where's the limit of the floodplain on this plan?
The floodplain is the hatched areas. So down here, again here, all throughout in this area up here. That's the flood zone for the ANRAD. Those hatched areas.
What about the FEMA flood zone?
That is, so again, the amount of times that this went through, this ANRAD plan went through 6 revisions.
Yeah.
Down version. This is what these lines with these base flood elevations on them are what FEMA has shaded on their flood map. But these shaded areas are the only areas on this site that fall below those base flood elevations. Therefore, they are the only areas that are in an area subject to flooding.
I'm going to provide some information / comment here. Peter, if you're surprised by what this floodplain looks like, that's perfectly understandable. It's a very strange looking floodplain. I was on the commission when this ANRAD came through, and it was very tricky. It doesn't follow the mapped FEMA floodplain, but that was intentional. We requested, as I think is the accurate way to do it, that the floodplain should be shown based on actual elevations, surveyed elevations. But that was very complicated on this site because of the fact that it is, a site where stockpiles and materials are constantly being moved and graded and regraded. And so, past plans were looked at. There was a lot of other data that came into play, and it did get very, very complicated. But I concur that this is what was determined as being the floodplain. Now, that ORAD that was issued by the commission has expired. It expired earlier this spring. So in theory, that could be revisited. I will say that I don't have an issue with how the floodplain is being portrayed or the other resource areas. I feel comfortable with what that Kelly and Garrett have reviewed them together, and she's comfortable with it. I don't have an issue with that. I don't think that revisiting this now is going to yield very different results than a few years ago. There's no new data sources. I mean, nothing dramatic has changed on the site. So personally, I'm comfortable with continuing with the same depiction of BLSF on the site. As far as this question about compensatory flood storage, I am in agreement with staff and the peer review engineer, and I respectfully disagree. I sort of have to respectfully disagree with somebody on this one because there's a lot of professionals, weighing in, and that's okay. But I looked at all the material, the presentation. Whether it's the same reach or not, there's no place in the regs that says that, you can compensate at a different elevation, provided you're in the same reach. And I've handled this sort of situation, not quite this complicated, but elsewhere, and it's always been required to have that compensation at the actual elevation on the ground for the reasons that Phil described with regard to floodwaters actually making it to the flood elevation, at that flood elevation, making it to the compensatory flood storage area at the time that it needs to get there, or at the elevation that it needs to get there. It's sort of why you have conservation commissions when there's a gray area. I would certainly be open to hearing, if there was a call that was able to happen, with Tom McGuire from DEP. Certainly I weigh their opinion very heavily, and perhaps, it would be explained in a different way that might change my view. But, is this does this really, is this really a reach that has a similar elevation? I'm just not convinced that this is really what they were referring to. And like I said, regardless, I still don't quite interpret the regs in that way. I understand that there would maybe some other, there'd be changes to the plan. I'd ask whether there could, the path, and you don't have to answer this right now, but could the Riverwalk just be lower in the elevation, where there would need to be additional compensatory flood storage provided? Could the parking area be lower? Could the compensatory flood storage extend further to the south or the west, and take it out of a different area? So just something to think about, whether there may be a way to minimize those impacts. So that's what I had to say about that particular topic. I think if anyone wants to follow up, feel free, or if people just want to make comments on any other aspect of the project from the commission, feel free.
I had a couple questions. So I understand from some of the information that there was flood storage that was supposed to be put in 2005, or I shouldn't say it that way, and then the NOI in 2017 called for it, and it wasn't included, and that appears to be the problem area. And I was just wondering if somebody could point out where that was supposed to go, and if that's a location that's still a possibility, or is that something changed with that aspect? There's also sort of together with that question is the house that's up above, what is it, Building B, and whether or not, it looks to me like that's not part of the property, but there seems to be a lot of talk about the house and the land there. And so I'm not sure how that connects with what's being proposed here, or if it was part of the property previously, and that's why there's a lot of discussion about it.
I can address the member's question about the two-family house. It's all commonly owned. They were all separate parcels. They still are. The entire site it's been combined, but it was originally many separate parcels. The house is not part of the proposal in terms of everything that we submitted before the bodies. However, if the interpretation of the commission is that the compensatory storage needs to be done in conformance with the peer review's opinion, we're going to need to add in that particular property, because we would need to grade that area. So we would have to amend our applications to include that. But it was cleaner if we didn't include that property with everything else that was going on. That's the short answer as to why it's not in there, but why it's being discussed.
Thank you. And then I guess my other question that has to do with it is the practical effect of what's being proposed. I understand the arguments on both sides as to why what's being proposed in the location is either in conformance or not in conformance, but the practical effect of it, I didn't know if there was, I know there's a lot of paperwork and I tried reading through most of it, but I don't know that I even read everything correctly, whether or not there was a drainage calculation somewhere in there that showed where the additional water, if any, from the fill that was being brought in, where that was anticipated to go in the event of a flood.
John?
John, you're on mute if you
Sorry.
wanted. Thank you.
I mean, anything, this site where it borders the river, any flows or any floodwaters or any stormwater runoff goes to the river. So fill placed in there makes it have to get a more circuitous route to the river, but it's all going to that stretch of the river, which again is why I believe that's a reach of the river. That's what the outfall of this site is.
One question I have is the buildings, the warehouse and the offices are going to be placed on, I assume, level land. But I've been over to that site and it's anything but level. It's just full of hummocks and hills of material. And I just wondered, is that all going to be spread out, or are you going to be removing material? And if you're removing material, where is it going?
any material that's there that can be reused will be, but and any material that is not usable will be sent off site, and it'll be done in an appropriate manner. Currently, I think we're probably a fill site, so we tried to balance it, but I think they're going to be importing material onto this site versus exporting for the most part.
Thanks for the answers on those questions. I wanted to add something about the floodplain and the compensatory flood storage I didn't really address before. Sean, you pointed out the fact that there had been compensatory flood storage approved by the commission in the past, which is a very valid point. And again, I was on the commission at that time too, and I remember how difficult that decision was. And the commission was trying to be understanding of the fact that it would be an incredible expense and physically challenging to deal with the contaminated material, but did not want to wait until such time as the site might be redeveloped. So it's very, and this is, I'm not upset at any particular person, but it is very frustrating that that was never done. You know, we could have taken enforcement, though no one felt that needed to happen, but allowed the notice of intent sort of on good faith. Unfortunately, I don't think there's been a negative from it in the intervening years, but it is very frustrating it never happened. But now the circumstances are different. So I would never want to, you know, change my viewpoint for no reason on a project. There always has to be some rationale. But I always felt that it would have been more appropriate to have the compensatory flood storage at the actual elevation. So I didn't want anyone to think that we were being dismissive or that I was being dismissive of that past decision. I'm factoring that in, frankly. The other thing I wanted to say, just generally, there's so much that we could talk about in this project. I'm going to try to be uncharacteristically perhaps brief and just say that I agree. I mean, I do have a few specific comments, but I agree with all of the staff's comments and all of the peer review comments. And I'm very happy to hear that the team has looked at them and that you intend to revise the plan accordingly. Thank you in advance for that. Just a few specific things. I agreed with Kelly about the difficulty sometimes in referencing plans. There are some plans that are kind of hidden in the larger packet. And I think I thought our last NOI was a pretty large packet. And this, I think, definitely beats every record we probably ever had for the length of an NOI, understandably so. But it does make it a little challenging on some of those plans. Maybe they could be somehow referenced differently or pulled out. You know, Kelly elaborates on it a bit in her comments on what would make it a little easier to see in terms of plantings and some other things. I also think that we should talk about the tree waiver request that was put in. There was, within that packet, there was a detailed explanation from Garrett explaining why the waiver request was being required. You know, if commissioners already have read it and have an opinion on it, we could just talk about it, or if people want to hear from Garrett directly, the rationale, but that does make a big difference to how many trees are planted on the site. Does anyone want to hear directly on that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Garrett, would you mind giving us a brief, if you can, summary of your request to waive the tree policy?
Certainly. So to try to address the tree policy, we wanted to put in as many large diameter trees as we could. When I say large diameter, I'm saying to your specification under the tree policy. So the ones that would be located throughout the site, more or less landscaping, and now we have cultivator names with those. We're not putting in the cultivators. They will be native tree species. So by doing so, we will have quite a few of the trees that are being cut. And when I say trees being cut, I'm referring to native tree species. Those would be replaced by the ones we are planting throughout the sites that will be native trees. When I say native trees, I mean, you know, paper birch, the red maple. So those are the ones, if you saw the list we had for landscaping plants, those are the ones we would be using. Now, we pretty much match the natural trees that are being cut down for the project. And the majority of these trees being cut is because we have to remove the hazardous materials. So we have to go in and alter the riverfront area. We have to do that. Well, it's already altered, but we have to take out these trees. So we're replacing them on the site. Now, when I looked at the invasive tree species, we have a lot of the black locust. There were a couple others, invasive trees that we have. Those are going to be cut again in the riverfront area, in the restoration area. And there are a few outside that are going to be in the project area. There's quite a few black locusts that are down at the existing stormwater basin. They surround the basin itself. So those ones are going to be cut as well. But again, those are black locusts. Those we would cut anyway because they're invasive to get rid of and treat. So when we go to replace those, where are we going to replace them? The location is going to be on the slope going down to the river. And in this area, it's a significant slope. I don't know how we would ever get the size trees you're talking about down that slope and plant it on the slope and then go and water them and have them survive. Now, I've done that before. I've had large diameter trees on a slope like that. It was on an ET&L project on 2A in Lexington. They didn't survive. So the smaller ones did. We were able to do buckets and bucket brigade and water them that way and down along the bottom section. We can do hose here too, but it was hard to get enough water to those trees on that slope and keep the little dishes for the water and everything because they would just wash out. Here we're going to have a erosion control blanket over it, so you're really not going to have that dish. So trying to do that, I think the survivability of the larger diameter trees in this area is not going to be effective, and we're going to have a high mortality rate. The smaller ones, and not only that, we also have white-tailed deer that utilize that section of the river down along the northeast portion of the site. They go across from the adjacent property, come onto the site, and then they curve to the east and go down that section towards Wetland A, between Wetland A and the river. So they actually have a trail where they come up through the river along that area. We are going to have to put chicken wire klutches around these plants so that they are not eaten. We're doing that at this location. I have a feeling we will lose them by the deer if we don't do that. Trying to do larger chicken wire klutches for those trees are also going to be difficult. So these are things that we're looking at as far as trying to get these trees to grow. And what we've done is we've added more trees so that we could meet, we're trying to meet your tree requirements. So instead of having that exact number, we have upped the replacement number with additional trees. So if you read through the waiver that I provided, you will see, I forget off the top of my head how many it is, but it's significant. So instead of that, we're adding more trees at a smaller size.
Great, thanks very much, Garrett.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, thoughts?
I can appreciate that. A lot of people have a hard time thinking about planting a 1-inch caliper tree versus a 4-inch caliper tree, and geez, that 1 inch isn't going to survive, but it doesn't have as much transplant shock. The root system is intact. Yes. And especially, getting water to those types of trees. The bigger trees, they really need a lot of TLC, and if you've got them in a difficult location, on a slope especially, that can become a problem. So I would like to see, bigger trees in areas that can be easily accessible, but in areas that can't be accessible, I wouldn't have a problem with smaller trees. I think that a lot of communities are using them now, and they're working out pretty well.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Hey, that sounds reasonable to me as well. The memo was pretty helpful, I thought, on that. Okay, another item that I had flagged that I thought we might want to discuss was the issue of our 25-foot no disturb. Obviously, that area is disturbed on the site, understandable given the history. And, typically we do talk about that during permitting for commercial projects in particular, where that sort of mainly applies, and try to gain some of that back if we can. I realize a significant amount of restoration work is going into this project, which I'm enthusiastic about and I appreciate very much. I wondered if there might be some other even small opportunities to increase that buffer. For example, there is a meadow shown on the plan that, you know, I think if that was planted with a suitable seed mix and very limited mowing once a year or maybe twice a year, something like that, you know, could be very beneficial. Kelly, our staff, also talked about the area beyond the path and the pavement and the top of the river. Another area where I think it would make a lot of sense to have a nice native seed mix with a mix of forbs and grasses and limited mowing, and, you know, maybe a strip immediately adjacent to the path would be mowed just for that neat look and to not obstruct the path. But those would be ways in my mind that would be very easy to sort of increase the value of that buffer. A question I had about work that's, or structures that, if you want to say, that are in the 25-foot, is this block wall that's proposed to remain. So there's one block wall that's coming out and then there's a long section of block wall that's remaining. Is it, I know it's being graded right to it. Is it critical that it remain? Is there any other way that that area could be regraded or otherwise restored? You know, walls are never sort of ideal along a river like this, and it may just not be possible, but that asks you to look at that. Anything else from the other commissioners? I do want to give the public a chance to comment soon. Anything else from the commission that you wanted to?
I did. I actually.
Yeah, Peter, please.
I'm not complaining, but I think the one thing, I don't think they answered Kimberly's first question about where that proposed compensatory storage is supposed to be in the prior submission.
Yeah, Sean, can you elaborate on that question? I think the question related to where it's proposed now and where it would need, you know, where it would need to be proposed with the change in interpretation, so to speak.
Kimberly, can you?
And Kim, please chime in. It was your question, so.
Right. No, the question was really where it had been proposed previously. I was trying to get context of how that affected the conversation now, how it was earlier proposed, and then what's being proposed now, and whether that's the same or substantially different.
I can show you generally. I don't have those plans with me, but just from memory, I think I can, you know, again, not, so I'm proposing in this general area right here behind this existing building, there is a lot more fill that's proposed under this circumstance than what was done by building this garage, but it was generally in this same area right here, which is why I redid what I did this time around. That's where this existing house here, I'll call it a house, it's not a house, it's an office building, has a high slope, has a high parking area behind it, and the ground slopes back down as you come down into the site. So this is the area that under the last notice of intent was proposed to be excavated for compensatory storage. And that's why I took that and I expanded that same area and did the same thing this time.
Okay, one other thing. I was wondering if you could submit, you had the PDF report of that seminar you attended. I wonder if that could be submitted to commission. I would like to look through that.
I forwarded that to staff a few weeks ago.
Okay, I wasn't aware. Sorry.
I can do it again, certainly.
Well, if staff has it, then it shouldn't be a problem. I guess the other thing, the one comment that you made, you talk about the existing flooding, which I'm at the upstream culvert. You say it swoops down Arnold Street and then will come across the Graziano property. Isn't that in the area where you're proposing your buildings, that you're going to have flooding on this road that's now going to go to Arnold and then cross your site? It doesn't seem like a good design, and we'll still have impacts to adjacent properties. I mean, that's why we look at trying to do the, compensation in the areas where it's most needed.
Well, I think some of the neighbors and some of them again might be on here. Part of the reason it came down Arnold Street the last few times is because there is a drainage system in Arnold Street that goes in on my client's property that was not really known to anybody other than a few people, and it had been broken, and it was subject of a previous, I believe, an RDA. Garrett can confirm that.
Yes.
To repair that pipe that goes through there, and that relieves a lot of that. And we, as part of this proposal, are also proposing to further upgrade the drainage in Arnold Street. We're relaying the sewer, we're relaying some of the water, and we're relaying the drainage. Again, and some of the neighbors in that area have some of their, across the street from our site on Arnold Street, they have smaller tie-ins to some of the drainage system that's in there, and we've agreed to incorporate their tie-ins and allow them to continue and come back in through my client's property.
Yeah, just want to add to that. Again, Arnold Street is going to be upgraded with full-blown utilities. It's going to be new catch basin and drain line that collect runoff from Arnold Street and direct that into the river. So the drainage, overall drainage in the area on the street is going to be improved.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask about that? If the flooding is taking place in a culvert that goes under Adams Street, has there been any discussion in the past about increasing the capacity of that culvert?
I guess that might be a question for Kelly, if you're aware.
No, that has never been raised by the town or anyone else.
I was just curious, if that was ever discussed, it might solve a little bit of a problem.
I say culvert, it's basically a bridge. It's pretty substantial. When you drive down Adams Street, there's buttresses on either side of it. It's basically a bridge.
Okay.
What is the opening roughly?
I don't know. I mean, hold on. You don't have the benefit of this, but I have quick AutoCAD here. I can give you.
Yeah, it's significant.
Large.
Yeah, it's like
Let's move on.
it's like 24 feet wide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not a simple pipe.
And also, just want to add to that, the town has a major sewer line run under that and a siphon system run under the river.
Okay.
So it's a major
It's a big deal. Understood.
Okay,
Thanks for all the information. It's really helpful. I'm just going to rattle off a few other quick things that were on my list, and then turn it over if Kelly has anything she wants to add, and then open it up to the public. So first, with regard to stormwater, it's interesting that the site, I would also, as the peer review did, and as has been done elsewhere, I would also consider, not redevelopment based on the stormwater standards, because there's virtually no actual impermeable surface on site, though I'm sure some of it is compacted significantly. So I think it would be appropriate to handle it in that way. I'd like to see consideration of a different spot for snow storage further from the river. We need details for some of the structures, like we don't know what model storm scepter, unless I could have missed it. I also did my best to read as much as I could, but I may have missed stuff. It's hard to get through everything. And I have concerns about how many new outfalls are going in, and how close they are, and whether there might be any opportunity to pull those back and have any, just a slight change to that if possible. I'm going to recommend that we include a condition, and that this would be reflected in the O&M, to prohibit chemicals within the riverfront area, herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers. And then finally, with regard to low impact development, it's always something that's supposed to be considered. I appreciate that there is some infiltration going in. I think that's always a great option when the soil is supported. I don't know if there may also be opportunities to do some vegetated solutions as well, or in place of. even smaller features are always beneficial, and I didn't see anything like that on the plans. And then last, so that was the only additional things I wanted to mention on stormwater beyond the Kelly's and peer review input. With regard to riverfront area, I would consider that this is redevelopment, with the exception of the portions of the site, and that is due to the lack of topsoil, with the exception of the portions of the site that are vegetated. I would say that those are new development. I mean, as soon as you have vegetation in a very quick amount of time, you get a small layer of topsoil. I don't think that that's going to change things dramatically in terms of the project. I think both sets of standards can be met, but I just thought it was worth making that clarification in terms of my interpretation. So, Kelly, did you want to add anything at this time?
No, not at this time. I think, you know, we all have made a lot of comments. Peer review made a lot of comments. I made a lot of comments. Commission members have made comments, but I think the number one issue to resolve is the flood storage, and that really will inform how the rest of the project, whether it stays the same or evolves. So I think we should.
And I have two more quick questions. One of them, we're looking at the project as a limited project for remediation, and I didn't see any plans that showed the actual areas that were being remediated, whether or not it was a position that it was the entire site falls under that, or if it was a portion of it, and whether or not it was possible to include a plan in the plan set if it wasn't there, and I may have just missed it.
If you don't mind me speaking, I believe it is the last appendices to the notice of intent has the, it's basically the remediation plan, and it's the areas in red, the hot spots. And there are discussed under 4.2, section 4.2 of the notice of intent narrative. There's a couple of references as far as for the construction sequence in the narrative. And it's also the areas are referred to under 4.4 of the ecological restoration plan. So the areas that are going to be remediated. They're then, of course, in that huge document that's attached for the phase 4 remediation plan. So it's in there, and it's only in the text, but the plan itself that goes along with all this is the last appendices to the NOI.
Thank you. And then just my last question is, I saw there were only 5 dumpster locations, and for a size this big, there's going to be a lot more dumpsters. But I just, as a practical matter, I understand that they move around. The more concern of them being right up against the river. So if we could get a better understanding of where they're likely to be. The U-shaped building, it would be hard to be inside. So those ones, it seems like, might end up all up next to the proposed flood storage, or maybe in the parking spots right next to it. But I don't know how the other commissioners would feel about it. I don't know that I would need to see them on the plan, but I would like to see a better idea of where that's likely to go.
Thanks, Kim. I agree with those comments as well. And I think Kelly also commented on the slight difficulty in visualizing perhaps the hazardous materials work, and maybe showing that in a different way. And I'd meant to also stress the showing the existing and proposed conditions. We don't really have those on any plan together, which would be helpful. Okay, I know I saw Robert Kearns raise a hand a while back. Robert, if you're still on the call, do you want to ask a question or comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience.
No problem. Just one comment. I've been under the Monadic River at Adams Street, and that is a bridge. So it's not a culvert, just for the record. Then I also, just a comment, I agree with the chair's comment about the block wall. If that can be removed, that'd be nice in the snow storage. If it can be away from the river, as well as if the dumpsters could be along the MBTA railroad on the other side, away from the river, I think that would be better. Another comment, I like the river walk. My question would be, is the applicant going to pay for the Riverwalk construction and maintenance as part of the restoration project?
Thanks, Robert. If someone from the team, the applicant's team wants to answer that question about the Riverwalk, feel free.
Sure, I think, thank you for the question, Mr. Kearns. I think at this point, given the changes that we need to undertake at the site, that I wouldn't be able to comment on that and as to whether or not the Riverwalk will survive the revision. So perhaps we can discuss that as we move forward, but not willing to commit that the Riverwalk will be feasible at this point. So we'll see what the redesign looks like.
Okay. I know that like some other Riverwalks they've done like in the flood area, like along behind Shaw one, and it's low, or it could be like a boardwalk. I know they've done that. They're more expensive. And then is my other question was, is the contaminated area behind the 2-family house / office, is that eroding into the river?
Garrett, you want to answer that?
It looks, I don't believe it's it's really eroding into the river. It looks pretty stable there as far as there's not a lot of scouring at that location that I could see. The bank really hasn't changed at that location. Even the elevation of the recent floods, nothing has really changed over the course of the last 4 years that I have noticed.
And the material, Mr. Kearns, the material is auto shredder residue. It's not a fine material. When it's in the ground, it's in large chunks, and it generally stays where it is. So we haven't seen much movement of any of the auto shredder residue throughout the site.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question was, in the planning board meeting, there was talk about there was some contamination in the river that may be cleaned up. Is that along the banks, and is that part of the plan?
There is a small area. It's rather small. It's only 213 square feet. And that is located along the north eastern portion of the site. That area will be cleaned up, yes. I don't think it'll probably happen within one day, that cleanup, just be excavated. And then it's going to be replaced with a similar material that's found in that area of river as far as sand and gravel mix. But to make sure we stabilize, we're going to put a coconut mat over the top and seed it with native native grass species, so that it makes sure it's, it doesn't erode.
Thanks. And if it's feasible to keep the Riverwalk, even if it's at a lower gradient, I don't know, depending on what the commission thinks, I think it could be a good idea.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Robert. Anyone else, any other members of the public wish to comment? You can raise your hand. I see, I'm not sure how to see the names of the people that have raised their hands.
Brian Williams looks like he wants to talk.
Okay.
Brian, can you hear us?
Muted.
Brian, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, Brian, I see you now, but it looks like you're unmuted on our end, but maybe still muted on your end. If you're there and want to speak. Okay. Is there anyone else that wanted to talk? And we'll try to come back to Brian. Okay.
I think we might have Brian back.
Okay.
Maybe.
There's a tab located at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, I don't see him anymore, but I did find out how to see if he's on the call, but I don't think he's there anymore.
No, wait a minute.
There he is.
He just came in as a panelist. It looks like the mute's off.
Brian?
Brian Williams, are you on the call? Do you want to comment in the meeting? unfortunately, we can't hear you at this time, so I think we'll wrap up our discussion and I'll try once more to come back to you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yep.
If there's technical difficulties for a member of the public, they could always post their question in the chat feature. If they're able to type, we'd be happy to respond to written questions. Just a
Okay,
thought.
thank you. Yeah, that's a good thought. And of course, anything could be submitted in writing after the meeting as well. If for some reason someone can't even do the chat. I actually don't know if the chat is enabled for this meeting. I thought it was not enabled, but I'm not certain about that.
It is, it's enabled.
Oh, it is, okay. So I just had a final thought as well, which is simply that I wanted to acknowledge the work that has gone into the project. This site, I've been familiar with this site for a very long time, and I'm enthusiastic about seeing it redeveloped and seeing this level of improvement. It would be such a shame to see the Riverwalk go away. I appreciate so much that you have the careful consideration, the fact that it's included in the plan. We're doing our best to interpret the regs as is the applicant's team as well. And I hope that there's a way to keep, if not the entire thing, at least part of it. Please come back and talk to us if you have different options for how you could potentially do something like that. Maybe there would be something different that could work. And then the one final thing I should mention is that there may be commissioners that want to make a site visit. Let's see, Diane and I are probably the only two that I know for sure that have been on the site. I'm not sure that I need to see the site again right now, but if anyone else wants to see it, what is the current access to the site? Somebody from the applicant's team answer that. Just so would we need to schedule something, or could people just come by when they wanted?
We would encourage folks to reach out to us, and we're happy to have someone walk the site with you. So we'll make it available to your schedules, but we would, just for safety reasons, prefer to have somebody walk the site with you.
Okay, perfectly understandable. I'm just going to take a wild guess here based on the last couple of times we've tried to schedule a site visit that it would probably be very difficult to find a time that works for everybody, and the current social distancing making it that much more challenging. So perhaps if members want to make a site visit, maybe just reach out to Kelly directly to coordinate with the applicant.
We can do it individually. I mean, if members want to come on their own, that's fine.
Great, thank you so much for that, for allowing that. That's very helpful. Let me try once again, Brian Williams. Do you want to comment? Okay, so we do not hear you. If you're trying to speak, please, if you have a comment, you can always submit it in writing after the meeting. Is there anything, I'm going to give one last chance for anyone to speak before making a motion continue. Does anyone else want to comment on anything?
Let me just, there's someone on the phone. Let me just make sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Are you, person on the phone, are you interested in commenting on this project?
Muted.
Okay, so it appears not, or they are also muted.
They're muted. You can see the little.
Yeah, so they're muted. They're unmuted on our end, but muted on their end. So again, I'm sorry that we can't hear you. If you wanted to comment, please send in a written request or written comments. Okay, if there's nothing further, I'll offer up a motion to continue the public hearing for 40 Arnold Street and 70 Adams Street to our next meeting on October 1st.
Second.
Second. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Crowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Francis?
Aye.
And Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, 5-0. Thank you so much, everyone, for all your time, and we'll see you in a month.
Thank you.
Okay, I was about to mute myself, forgetting that we weren't done. I still have stuff I have to say. So we're moving on to other business. First, we have a request for a certificate of compliance, DEP 8-674 for 201 Commerce Drive. The applicant was the Mar Scaffolding Company, And on this item, we got a memo from Kelly, and then we had a communication from the applicant from the last that we kind of got the day of the last meeting, so we needed some time to review it. Is anyone on the line from that project? Kelly, is everyone unmuted? I think they are.
Yeah.
Okay. I do not see anyone on the call from that project.
I did expect Dave Hughes to be on the call, so I'm wondering if this is him. He's
Okay. I'm not sure that we can move forward without
yeah.
someone on the call, so we'll give it a moment. And Dave, yeah, Dave is who sent in the letter. Dave Hughes, are you on the line, or anyone else for 201 Commerce Drive? So it appears not, because I don't see anyone muted currently. Okay, so I think in light of that, unless anyone has a different opinion, I feel like we need to still have some discussion about this memo. It's not completely cut and dry where everything has been resolved. So I feel like we should continue it to the next meeting. And frankly, maybe some of the issues will be resolved in the meantime. I mean, it's not a public hearing, so we also could discuss, the responses amongst ourselves and ask Kelly to relay our input to the applicant. Does anyone, Kelly, do you have an opinion either way?
I think you could discuss it and make your feelings known. If they disagree with it, they could have the opportunity to come back to the next meeting and make their case.
Sounds reasonable, particularly since if we were to issue it, I doubt that there would be any objection. And alternatively, they're going to need to come back either way. Okay, so does anybody have any input on the letter? So there was, Kelly had concerns about the dumpster. Maybe we should just go through, I'm trying to do this in the most efficient manner possible. There were questions about the dumpster, which was not sort of ideally located with a raised lip to contain any spills. And my opinion is that there's no reason to not have it comply. I don't know how complicated it would be to do that after the fact, but I was not convinced by the response. You know what? I'm just going to kind of go through and give a few bits of feedback since no one else is jumping in, and then just jump in if you do disagree or have or want to comment on it. There was a comment about the exterior. Sorry, go ahead.
Can Kelly share the letter?
Or Peter.
Yes, can Kelly share the letter?
Oh, good.
Well, I sent it by email. I don't have it on my screen, although I could probably get it.
It was, so it's called, the letter is called Mar Scaffolding 2020. It didn't have the address in the title of the document, in case that's helpful for you to locate it at home. I mean, I don't think I should read it, the whole thing. I feel like that would.
This is getting complicated.
I feel like it's going to get too complicated. Yeah. Almost just as soon continue it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, well, here's the letter if I'm sharing my screen successfully.
We haven't seen it yet.
No. See it now?
We do see it now. Is this helpful? Is this reasonable to go through it in this manner?
Sure.
Okay, so Kelly's comments are numbered 1, 2, etc. So the first one, that was done, correct, Kelly? That's been resolved?
Yes.
Stamp letter. Okay, so that's all set. So comment number 2 from Kelly was about condition 36. The dumpster should be properly contained and maintained. And the response was that it had to do with the fact that it's kind of being maintained and it's new, so it doesn't have any issues. And it's fenced, no spill hazard, but spills could of course go to the catch basins. anyway, so my input on it was I'd like to see if they could change it now to either add a raised lip or some sort of containment around it.
It's doable.
It's doable, so
I mean, you can do a precast concrete lip.
yeah. It didn't seem like a completely unreasonable request to have them do now. Okay. Want to move on to 3?
All right.
So the third one was that, so it was stated or represented during permitting that there would not be any exterior fuel storage on site, which they agreed was true. Apparently they changed the plans and went back to the planning board to get the changes approved, but they don't say this, but they obviously did not come back to conservation to have the plans changed. And so the response is that there's a drive pad that has spill containment grooves, and that drive pad is 59 feet from a storm drain, and that the fuel island will have a spill containment kit. And the storm drain is equipped with a drain hood to prevent any oil flow out of that basin, and there's rubber mats, etc., in the spill kit. Any thoughts on that? So Kelly, you're suggesting that at this point that it should be covered ideally.
Yes.
And have the spill containment grooves closer to the actual, like around the actual storage itself, not on the drive pad.
Right, yeah.
Correct? Okay. Do commissioners agree with that recommendation? I mean,
Yes.
okay. I also agree. I mean, particularly where, you know, we're sort of allowing something that I think if this had come to us, you know, hey, we do in fact need to have this exterior fuel storage, we probably would have conditioned those things, would be my guess. Not, yeah, I don't know. I heard a yes. Peter, any thoughts?
No, I'm
Sorry
okay.
to put you on the spot.
No, I'm okay.
Okay. And I mean, if it's just too difficult, you know, they could come back and express that, but at least they'll know that we still feel that they should do it. Point 4 was, I won't read the whole thing, but basically, some of the shrubs were having a hard time. We wanted to see if there needed to be some replantings, and there needed to be time to see if the plants survive the season. We're going to have to wait till October now anyways, and Kelly's initial recommendation was to wait until October or November. So I don't think anything really changes on that one. And then 5 had to do with an area that was being mowed that was not supposed to be mowed because it was meant to be for connectivity. I clearly remember that during the permitting process. That was one of the big pros of making these basins, which are replacing an isolated wetland. So I'd like to confirm that, you know, that's being, or not being done, I guess, that it's not being done. So I don't really think we need to take much action. Is that enough information to relay back, Kelly?
Yep.
All right, so do we need a motion to continue this? I think we don't, right? Or maybe we should to be safe. I'll make a motion to continue the request for certificate of compliance for DP 8-674 201 Commerce Drive to our next meeting on October 1st. Is there a second? Commissioner Hayward?
Second.
Commissioner Crowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Francis?
Aye.
And Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, 500. Next, request for certificate of compliance for DEP 8-671 50 Christina Drive. The applicant was Chaplin. And this one, Kelly is recommending that we issue the certificate. Anything further to add, Kelly, or anybody have any questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Hearing nothing, I would make a motion to issue the complete, are there any surviving conditions?
There is one about the area beyond the markers, maintains in a natural state.
Okay, so then I would make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance, a complete certificate of compliance with the remaining condition for DEP 8-671 50 Christina Drive. Is there a second? Commissioner Hayward?
Second.
Commissioner Crowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Francis?
Aye.
And Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous again, 500. And then we have a number of requests for extensions. I did not see the memo on this. I apologize. I'm not sure if I missed it or not. Can you just get us up to speed, Kelly?
Yeah, I think it came late in the day, but it's basically,
I'm so sorry, I didn't see it. Should we take these all together? Is the recommendation the same, or would you like to do one at a time? Okay, so let's take these all together then. This is, I might have said the wrong thing. This is not a request for COC. These are all requests for extension permits. And I'll just state for anyone who doesn't have the agenda in front of them, it's for DEP file numbers 8-646, 70 Jensen Farm Road, 8-648, 60 Jensen Farm Road, 8-649, 50 Jensen Farm Road, and 8-651, 30 Jensen Farm Road. Kelly, please.
I recommend we extend all 4 of them for 3
Okay,
years.
thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I didn't get that memo. So is this just for just a subdivision there that just houses are going in, they're not complete yet? Landscaping not complete or something like that?
Yeah, it was the Liberty Farm subdivision, and they came back and filed for the remaining house lots 3 years ago, and they've built I think 2 of the houses, and they're still working on the remaining 4.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, anything else? Okay, to simplify things, I'll make it one motion. There's no issue with that, is there, Kelly?
Who's gonna appeal it?
Can we, Kelly, can we make one motion on all of these?
I don't see why not.
Okay. Then I will make a motion to issue an extension permit for DEP 8-646, 70 Jensen Farm Road, 8-648, 60 Jensen Farm Road, 8-649, 50 Jensen Farm Road, and 8-651, 30 Jensen Farm Road. Is there a second? Commissioner Hayward.
Second.
Commissioner Crowe.
Aye.
Commissioner Francis.
Aye.
And Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0-0. And finally, the approval of the minutes from August 6th. I sent like one change along, or a few little typos. Anybody else have a question or comment on the minutes? Okay, I'll move to approve the minutes of August 6th, 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Crowe.
Aye.
Commissioner Francis.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Thank you, 5-0-0. We are unanimous. Our next meeting is October 1st. Anyone know that you won't be there? Okay, take care until then, everyone. Any announcements? Any other business? Okay, good luck to everyone in the coming month. I hope you all stay well. Good luck with school for those who have that coming up, and
Oh, boy.
indeed. We'll see you on October 1st, hopefully. All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Okay, Commissioner Crowe.
Aye.
Commissioner Francis.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous as always. 5-0-0. Thanks, everyone. Good evening.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.